I'm Barbara Lucas, and welcome to the Green Room, where we explore the environmental topics that green up our world. Today's topic is the environmental impact of our grocery shopping, not just the products we buy, but how the stores are run as well. Our guest today is Kevin Sharp, the Marketing and Member Services Manager at the People's Food Co-op of Ann Arbor. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So the whole topic of co-ops is very broad, and I know there's a lot of different types of co-ops, and we're not going to be able to cover them. We're just going to be focusing today on food co-ops. So will you please tell me, and I know you have been working there for 21 years, which is very cool, what is the People's Food Co-op of Ann Arbor?
People's Food Co-op of Ann Arbor is a member-owner-owned cooperative. We specialize in natural foods with an emphasis on locally produced foods, certified organic, fair trade, foods with minimal packaging and whatnot. So we are owned by the people in the community who benefit from the products and services that we offer.
And I read that the original goal, mission, was a commitment to locally grown organic food and protection of the environment, which is what you're doing still.
Exactly. Yeah. Over 40 years later. So,
40 years, huh?
Yeah.
So do you want to give us just a real brief history?
Sure. We started in 1971. If you think back to that time, it was sort of the height of the environmental movement, and there was a real sort of strong counterculture push, and things that nowadays we take for granted, like ready availability of brown rice or peanut butter without corn syrup or whole wheat flour, things you can find pretty much anywhere now, including the food co-op. You couldn't find as readily back then, and there were people that really wanted access to purer, more natural foods, and so they pooled their resources and went in and bought large quantities and then split it up, and eventually that became a storefront, and there was enough demand, and we've grown to what we are today. So,
as a student at the University of Michigan back in the late 70s, I was one of the members and used to work in the co-op. And
it's great to hear.
And I'm a member there today.
Excellent, thank you.
So I know there's a lot of social and political aspects to food co-ops, and we're not going to be able to get into that today either. Today, again, we're just going to be focusing on environmental impacts. And I was very interested when I saw this article in your winter newsletter, The Connection it's called, about this study that was done by the National Cooperative Grocers Association. They studied 165 of their members, and they rated them on a whole bunch of different variables, and some of them are environmentally relevant, so we're going to be talking about those today. And they compared them to conventional groceries. Now I would like to say that I bet in this particular area we have you know, different percentages than what we would find nationwide, because I know myself, I shop at a lot of conventional grocers in town and find a lot of organic food here. And locally sourced as well. We're just talking about this national survey. For instance, in terms of purchases locally sourced, they were way ahead nationwide, co-ops versus conventional. Organic produce is 82% compared to 12% conventional. How does that compare with what the People's Food Co-op in Ann Arbor does?
That's a good question. Our numbers, when we look at and quantify what we do at the food co-op, are very much reflective of the national averages as well. So nearly 80% of our produce is certified organic, and a good percentage of that is locally sourced as well, especially during the growing season. So yeah, on many of those, much of that data, our numbers are very, very much similar to the national average as well. So, yeah.
And apparently, nationwide, the food co-ops have better recycling rates, such as 81% of their plastic is recycled compared to 29% conventional grocers. They compost far more food waste. I know your little cafe does a good job with that kind of thing. And then the statistics of sustainably raised meat being 89%, that's a lot.
Yeah, so much of this too is really core to the values of our co-op. I mean, much of this is written into our policies, but also co-ops worldwide adhere to cooperative values and you know, environmental stewardship is one of those. So, you know, it's core to who we are and what we do.
Just for the record, what do they mean by sustainably raised meat?
Sustainably raised can mean a number of things, and it's reflective of usually a smaller scale operation. So it wouldn't include necessarily feedlots where the animals are housed in large concentrations and then the food is trucked to them. It would be more pasture raised, and so the animals are sort of raised in a more natural manner and less fossil fuel, for example, used to either truck the final product to market or you know, used to sort of bring food to the animal. You put the animal out in a pasture and let it feed naturally. So a lot of it has to do with that.
Okay. And it said that more co-ops than conventional stores they have certain products that they just won't sell, which happens more often. Do you guys do that at the People's Food Co-op?
We do, yeah. Our product guidelines, as I mentioned before, they give, we're to give preference, and we do, to products that are organically grown or certified and fair trade and minimally packaged. You can buy a lot of things in bulk. So there are broad ones like that. But there's also quite a list of ingredients that we exclude. We won't carry products with nitrites and sulfites. And you know, our dried fruit, for example, looks different. It's all natural. A lot of it's organic, but you won't find bright orange apricots, dried apricots. We dry an apricot, and they darken in color. And so there's quite a list of chemical additives that we just won't carry products that have those. So really none of the products in our store have chemical preservatives or colorings. That's sort of a baseline. But yeah, there are quite a number of products we exclude. Yeah.
That's funny. All these years of shopping there, I didn't know that. Another interesting statistic they have here is that the metric tons of carbon dioxide per $1 million of sales is a lot less. So in other words, the carbon footprint of the co-ops is less than the other conventional stores. But what I thought was interesting about the statistic is they said that it's not that the buildings themselves are more efficient necessarily, but that there's more is being sold per square foot, which I thought was kind of an interesting concept, because when I go into the co-op, I think, wow, it's pretty crowded in here. But on the other hand, maybe that's a good thing because it's more efficient use of space.
Right, right. Yeah, we definitely have to use our space wisely. It is a relatively small space, but we do pack a lot in there.
Yeah,
and you know, we're very, very careful with what we carry. We carry the things that people want. So we're able to utilize a smaller space more efficiently in a number of ways, including the energy use. So that's.
And speaking of energy, what about the refrigerators? Because that was something that was interesting in here.
Yeah, you know, the things like coolers and freezers and appliances, those use a lot of energy in our homes, and so you can imagine on a more commercial scale the energy use. And so we're very conscious of first maintaining the equipment so it's running efficiently, but then also as we're replacing equipment, we do so with more energy efficient versions, and so we're able to really minimize the energy use through maintenance and selection of energy efficient appliances, the coolers and the freezers and whatnot. So that's an important part that maybe isn't visible to the consumer, but we're very conscious of doing that. So.
They said something about something that's draped over the open coolers. What's that?
Yeah, they're curtains that we've had installed that on open face coolers, like the produce coolers and deli cases and things like that. When you walk through a grocery store, and the People's Food Co-op included, they're open during the day to allow ready access to the food inside, but then at night we close them up and put them to sleep, and that helps trap the cooling in, so they're not just left open to sort of cool the entire space. At least when the customer's not there, we pull the curtains down and it traps the coolant inside. Yeah.
And another thing this article said, and I don't know if you guys do this, but it said putting LED light bulbs in there because they don't burn as bright in the cooler area.
Yeah. We're in the process of replacing some of our lighting with LED. We're also looking at options throughout the entire store. Back when the store was first opened, we went with the most energy efficient lighting at the time, and now there's quite a bit of advancement in that technology, and so
Yeah, it changes fast.
it really does. So we're looking at replacing that throughout the store eventually, but in small areas where we can, either in off-site areas or in the equipment, we have switched to either LED, or we're in the process of doing so. Yeah.
Great. And we were talking a bit ago about restrictions on certain ingredients, and in another one of your newsletters there was an article about genetically modified organisms, GMOs. So how does the co-op handle that?
Yeah, this is a big issue. It's one of the biggest ones in our food supply at this point in time, I'd say. And I think it really illustrates just what a complex food system we've created for ourselves. GMOs, the genetically modified organisms, are increasing in our food supply, and they're in places where people may not expect them, things like zucchini and yellow squash and papayas. Sugar from sugar beets is a big one now, soy, I mean, these are all, canola, these are all products that a few years ago or several years ago were not genetically modified, and now some of them almost entirely are. So it's presented us with a bit of a conundrum.
Because sugar beets are widely grown in Michigan, right?
They're a big crop in Michigan. It's a local food item, and it's about half the price of sugar from sugar cane, which currently is not GMO. And, you know,
but it has its own environmental issues.
It does. There's an environmental
huge water
impact. Yeah,
footprint.
Absolutely. So what we've done, and we're still, you know, responding as new GMO products come on the market, is we have systematically gone through the store and we've removed products from our shelves that contain GMOs or are feared to contain GMOs. And part of the issue is you don't always know. Yeah. Where we do still have some is in some of our own baked goods, where we are looking for alternatives to the sugar beet sugar. But currently, if we switch to cane sugar, it would up to double the price of some items. It's also a local Michigan product, and some of our shoppers want that. So what we've done is we label everything that may still have GMOs, so people can make those decisions themselves. And we offer alternatives, things sweetened with maple syrup or fruit juice. So there's a little something for everybody, and we don't like the presence of the GMOs as much as anyone, and we're trying to sort of respond as the situation changes, and it's evolving pretty quickly. So.
Well, some studies support the use of GMOs. They say it's not bad for your health, et cetera, but let's just focus on environmental issues. Do you know of considerations environmentally for GMOs?
You know, again, a lot of it, there's not a lot of industry information about GMOs. There's sort of a definite lack of information. I think one of the most concerning things for me in this industry, and also me as a consumer, is that we're not given that information. And I would rather, you know, be an informed consumer and know, you know, what the impact of either the GMO in the environment is, or on my personal health, and we don't know. But I think in terms of providing the consumer with choice, I think on an environmental scale, if, say, one farmer, organic farmer, for example, doesn't want GMOs, there's always a concern with pollen from a neighboring field drifting into
I've heard
an
of
organic farmer's field.
Because then they'll lose their certification.
Right, exactly. And that's a definite danger. Now, there are some manufacturers that are getting certified GMO free. That's a new certification out where they're actually testing the product and making sure that it doesn't have GMOs in it.
And there's also concern with the monocultures that GMO crops can create, when not only do you have the crop, you have the herbicide ready, what's it called, Roundup ready, so that they kill off all the weeds.
Right.
And then the pollinators don't have anything for acres, miles, square mile after square mile.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's one sign of this sort of mega food system we've created. These sort of hyper productive, you know, very large farming conglomerates that they go through, and it's very much a monoculture. There are no sort of weedy edges to the fields. You know, they there are no sort of woodlots interspersed with the fields. And that's something different that you would find in some of our local farms here in Washtenaw County, especially some of the organic farms, is you find more biodiversity within that acreage, and partly the organic farmers in particular are growing a variety of crops, which helps, but also there's just more vegetation along the fence borders and in the woodlots and in neighboring wetlands, and so it's a richer, more diverse ecosystem.
Which is important not just for the bees, but the butterflies and the birds and
exactly.
on and on.
Yeah, everything.
Now, you mentioned that you label your products. I guess there was a campaign nationally trying to get it to be a national legal.
Labeling of GMOs. And this is a concept that the co-op is very much behind. If we ask consumers or ask our legislators, should GMOs be banned or allowed, there's a variety of opinions, and the data is somewhat lacking, and it's
mixed too.
It's mixed, yes, very much.
You can get people saying both sides.
But when asked, and this very much is where I fall too, both as a consumer and as associated with the food co-op, when asked, regardless of what their perception is of GMOs, do you believe that you should have the right to know whether that's in your food or not? The vast majority of people say, yes, we should. Whichever side of the issue I fall on, I want to know if that's in my food. And GMOs definitely fit all of the criteria that the FDA has laid out as requiring labeling in food, but they've yet to require that from GMOs. And so the Just Label It campaign and other campaigns are asking simply that the FDA follows its current guidelines for labeling an ingredient and apply that to GMOs, so that we could all look at a can of soup or a cereal or whatever it is and know whether or not there are GMO ingredients in there. And that's it. It's not saying don't include them, it's just saying just tell us if they're in there.
I guess Stabenow and Levin voted against it, and it went down, unfortunately, if you're supportive of it. But there is, for consumers that want to know, there are some websites, right, that they can go to find out, such as nongmoproject.org, justlabelIt.org. And then you also recommended the nongmoshoppingguide.com, and those will be on the screen for the audience. Another product that would be nice to know if it's in in various things is palm oil, because we had guests on the show that were talking about how the rainforests in Indonesia are being obliterated and the orangutans are being going extinct, et cetera, because of palm oil. You were telling me that you do sell palm oil in the People's Food Co-op, but it's sustainably raised? Yeah,
palm oil is currently it's very popular as an alternative for cooking, an alternative for olive oil or butter or lard. It's got healthful properties, according to some studies. And it's grown around the world, and really where it's grown is important from a sustainability point of view. A lot of the impact that you'll read about with palm oil, the deforestation and the huge plantations that are going in and the impact on wildlife like orangutans, is currently largely happening in Malaysia and parts of Indonesia. Our palm oil is sourced, some of it from Ecuador, and it's sourced from farms that are very sustainably managed. Great. And some of that is also fair trade. So the people growing it are paid a higher wage, which is what fair trade is. They're not in an exploitive relationship. And then some of it is also being sourced from the Philippines currently. So palm oil is a very interesting sort of case study with, again, this sort of complex food system, worldwide food system that we've created for ourselves and the impact. And it really is dependent on where it's being produced. Some of the palm oil from Africa, for example, is being done much more small scale and much more sustainably than, again, Malaysia and Indonesia. So it's important to look and see where that's coming from. If it's just listed as an ingredient in something, you won't necessarily know where it's from, and that's unfortunate. Yeah. And it's also really hard to tell because it won't necessarily say palm oil. I guess there's a list of like 30 different ingredients that are derived from palm oil. Right.
If people want to learn more about that, do you have a website that they could go to about?
Yeah, I think the Rainforest Action Network has a really good site and addresses palm oil.
RAN.org.
RAN.org,
Okay,
yes.
great. There is a rating system that the People's Food Co-op is starting to use, which does consider palm oil, which I was very pleased to see. And that's the How Good rating system. And apparently the People's Food Co-op is the first store in Michigan to utilize this system, and only the second co-op in the whole country to do so. Do you want to tell us what this system is?
Sure. We're very excited about this rating, and we're very delighted to be on the forefront of this. The folks at How Good have enlisted the aid of experts in a variety of fields, and they've spent 7 years researching this.
Wow.
And have researched scores and scores and scores of products, many of them on the co-op shelves. And they rate things like the sustainability from an environmental standpoint, the social aspects, you know, how the farmers growing the ingredients, you know, have been treated and dealt with, how the business, you know, the labor practices of that particular company. So there's a variety of aspects they look at, they put into a matrix, and they come up with a rating. And either doesn't rate highly enough to get a rating, that's the lowest perhaps, or it can be rated as good, very good, or excellent. And so many of the products on the co-op shelves, we're not there yet with all of them, but we're getting there, have been rated and are clearly labeled. So folks, as they go through the store, they can see how that particular product was rated based on these variety of criteria. So.
And people can go to the website as well to find out if a certain product that they're looking for is, you know, how they've rated it. And that website is howgood.com.
Howgood.com, yes.
And I played with it a little bit. Cereal is something I eat every day, and so I was looking up cereals. There's just tons and tons and tons of, and I was kind of interested to see that there was hardly any that got the highest rating, the great. There was you know, just a handful maybe on one hand, and then quite a few that had twos, you know, very good. But I was amazed how few got very good ratings. And let me just go through quickly what they, in terms of the environmental variables that they looked at. In terms of processing, they looked at the amount of processing. They looked at the sourcing, whether they were from small farms that support biologically diverse ecosystems, which is what you were talking about earlier. They talk about, they consider whether the product's grown with pesticides or fertilizers, how many additives are in the product, if it's got stuff in it just to increase shelf life or to magnify flavors. And also they even look at whether it was grown or processed in your region. Now, I'm not sure how they figure that out. I guess they have a way of knowing where you are when you plug it into your, well, I guess in your store you would know, but I'm wondering how they would know on the website. But anyway. So.
Well, some of that could be sourcing from other countries too, so presumably the...
Yeah, if they're considering our region, the whole U.S., then that would be easier.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really a start. And as we were talking before, you know, you could take exception endlessly to their ratings because, you know, what's important to one person is not going to be important to another. But as they make the point in their website, it might help, you know, despite any flaws it has, it might help the producers to know that people are out there looking at these things. I mean, I assume that would make a difference. And they say in their website that people are willing to pay more, like over 50% or something. People are willing to pay more for these things that they feel better about. So it seems like the producers have got to take notice.
I would think so, yeah, and I am hearing anecdotally quite a bit. People are watching the system, and they may choose the product next to it if it rates a little more highly. You know, it's informing our shopping decisions, so it's good. And like you say, it's a start. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's sort of a baseline, and somebody, you know, may have their own sensibilities around what they buy and why, but it'll at least be a guide, something to go on. So, yeah.
Well, I'll be interested to see how it works out for you. I think we've pretty much covered it. How can people get more information about the People's Food Co-op?
Great. They can certainly go to our website at peoplesfood.coop. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and all the social media. So, and certainly come by the store and talk to us in person as well. So.
And I'd like to say that your newsletters are wonderful. They're called the Connection, is it?
Yes.
And the current issue is always online, and some of the back issues, in fact, some of the things that we're talking about today, they'll be able to find on your website.
Yes.
And the study itself is at strongertogether.coop.
That's right.
So the study that we talked about in the beginning of the interview, they can actually look at that in detail. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being here today. It's been really interesting.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
For an online archive of today's show, go to ewashtenaw.org/greenroom. Thanks for joining us here in the Green Room.